Hello and welcome to episode 235 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die from 1950, all about Eve. I really wished I'd made this review. In fact, I think I did film a version of this many weeks ago. I saw this film for the first time 6 weeks ago, and the heat wave hit. It was just impossible to film a video. I tried and it was just a terrible video. And there have been so many reviews and videos in this series where I've thought, I'm really happy and proud of that review. What I said about the film, I articulated myself on why I liked it, why I didn't like it. And there have been plenty of videos where I feel like I've done a really bad job. And this is a film I feel like I need to do at least a decent job of because it's worth it. It's one of those films that's really special, and I need to try and convey that in the best way I possibly can. So hopefully I can still do that, even though it's many weeks since I've saw it. But I will say that, 6 weeks ago, since then I've probably seen 20, 30 films, maybe more than that, and it's more fresh in my mind than most of the films that I've seen since then. It has that impact, it has that staying power. Had never seen it before, had heard about it, one of those classic titles, all about Eve, Bette Davis, and I was assuming that Eve was going to be a character played by Bette Davis, but it's not. And this film was hugely successful when it came out in 1950, won the Academy Award for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Script, Best Supporting Actor for George Sanders. It really just swept the board and was nominated and won other kind of awards as well. And it's interesting to me that this film came out in 1950, the same year as a little movie called Sunset Boulevard, which you can draw a lot of parallels between those two movies. They're both about an aging actress, and there's similar themes there. They're very different films, but there's a thread of similarity that kind of joins them together, at least of all the fact that they came out in the same year. Anyway, Bette Davis stars as Margo Channing, a theatre actress, a very famous stage actress who's in her 40s now and she's kind of feeling it. She's one of those women who her presence fills up the entire room. She's very boisterous, very kind of strong-willed, a strong personality, one of those types of people. And but at the same time, she does have that kind of sensitivity to her, and she does have that kind of doubt of, am I getting too old to play these same parts over and over again? She's still successful, but as far as her own eyes are concerned and what she sees in the mirror, she can tell that she's getting old, or getting older at least. And Eve is a young, doe-eyed woman who is besotted with Margo. Eve Harrington, she goes to see Margo at the play that she's currently performing in every single day, multiple times a day. She'll see all the performances, and she gets taken in. She's outside the theatre at the beginning of the movie. She gets taken in by Margo's friend, like, come and meet her. If you're such a big fan, we'll come and see her backstage. Oh no, I couldn't possibly. Eve is very meek, but she goes backstage and she meets Margo, who kind of takes a bit of a liking to her. We kind of get to hear Eve's backstory about losing her husband, and she kind of tells them where she is now in her life, and it isn't a very nice story. So Margo takes pity on Eve and says, come with me and you can be my assistant. And so Eve is very happy and very glad to take on the mantle of assisting Margo in any way she can. Now Margo already has an assistant called Birdie, played by Thelma Ritter. And Birdie doesn't really trust Eve when she comes into the fold, and very much takes a quick distrust stance to Eve and everything that she seems to be standing for. She kind of comes into the family of actors and this theatre life. Thelma Ritter is an awesome actress. I love her in everything I've seen her in. She has such character to her. She has such a strong essence. And I see things in her that I've seen in women that I've known growing up in my life. And I'd be very surprised if Thelma Ritter in real life wasn't what you would call maybe a tough broad. She just has such character to her. And it's no different in this film too. She's such a joy to watch. And I liked how Birdie's kind of just looking around the corner, kind of, so to speak, at Eve and what Eve is doing in the household. Anyway, so the story is about Margo and it's about Eve. What I love about this film, such a great move. We open with a scene at an award ceremony, a very kind of upper class kind of posh kind of award ceremony for theatre actors, very posh stuff. And we see these people sat at the tables. We see Margo. We see the character played by George Sanders. I forget his name. And he's kind of a theatre critic, and he's a very, very vital character in the story. And we kind of hear this narration that's setting up what we're about to see, which is this prestigious award being given to Eve Harrington. So the film kind of spoils it at the beginning that Eve goes on to be an actress herself. And so I think the real crux of this movie, as it progresses and as it goes on, is you thinking as the audience, what are Eve's motives? What is she really in this for? Is Birdie right to distrust her? Or are we just thinking the worst along with her too? And I love that about it. And I love that really Eve isn't in the film that much. I mean, she's in it plenty. But if you were to take that 2-hour running time and really look at how many minutes she's on screen, it's not, I don't think as many as you would expect for someone whose name is in the title of the movie. I'd say Margo gets the lion's share of screen time, and I guess screen credit. But it's more about, it's in the title, all about Eve. Let me tell you all about Eve. Before she gets up to the stage to accept the award at the beginning of the film, before we've even seen her on screen, we flash back to Eve outside the theatre and being brought in to meet Margo, and we see the whole story progress. And at the very end of the film, we see Eve accept the award. And so we get to see how that sequence, that series of events leads us to her receiving this award. Loved how they did it, a really cool framing device, but also just how we really get a feeling of Eve through other characters' perspectives and how they feel about how what they think about what she's doing. She becomes an assistant to Margo, and then things progress from there. I don't want to spoil too much more of what happens, even though I kind of told you what happens at the beginning, which in effect kind of tells you what happens at the end. But it's all about the journey to that destination and how it happens, why it happens, and what kind of gets destroyed in the process. Bette Davis is unbelievable as Margo Channing. One of my favorite performances, I think. She's so full of fire in this film. There's some really great, incredible writing in the film, which only lends itself well to insanely quotable lines from the film. One that really stood out to me, that actually I noted down just so I got it completely right, because I didn't want to paraphrase it and get it wrong. I have it here on my phone. When Margo is having a particularly kind of feisty back and forth with someone, she says, "Everyone has a heart, except for some people." Oh, that's just a killer line. That's such a great line. And there's some really funny, witty moments in the film. There's a character played by Marilyn Monroe, who's this kind of ditzy blonde and aspiring actress. She isn't very good. And, the George Sanders character says, "Well, you can just go to television, And she says, "Tell me, do they have auditions for television?" And he replies, "That's all television is, my dear." Which is just fantastic line. There's lots of kind of funny moments in the film, but you're still really invested in this story and what happens and how the characters kind of combust and interplay and everything. And it's an incredible cast of characters and some great actors. Obviously, Marilyn Monroe, I still haven't really seen anything of Marilyn Monroe. I haven't seen her most famous films. I don't know if she's a good actress. I couldn't tell you anything about her. But to see her in this film was fun, but she's a very small role. Anne Baxter as Eve, knowing what happens throughout the whole course of the film and what her character is, where she's from, why she's doing what she's doing, her performance gets even better once you know all that backstory, because again, she seems so meek and innocent at the beginning, and to see where her true intentions lie and how that manifests itself, I thought was superbly played by Anne Baxter. Now, apparently, Anne Baxter kind of put herself forward to be nominated for the Best Actress award, and they were going to put her for Best Supporting. But Bette Davis was also up for Best Actress, and so the general consensus or the belief is that by having both of them competing for the Best Actress award kind of cancelled each other out, and neither of them won, which I think is kind of a travesty, because I think Bette Davis, her name was all over that Oscar. I think she did an amazing job in this film. She's so good at being, being angry and spiteful, but showing that vulnerability in a few moments. You really see the heart and the humanity of this woman. I really thought the way the film was starting, she would be kind of a cold, uncaring character, but there is a lot of heart to Margo, and I think that Bette Davis really made that character even better than it could have been if someone else had played it, I think. And another great kind of little bit of trivia that I noted down as well was that her boyfriend in the film, Bill, I think his name was, the actor Gary Merrill. I'm not sure if they kind of hooked up while making the film or if they were already together, but soon after this they got married, and soon after the film came out, All About Eve, Bette Davis implored Joseph L. Mankiewicz to write a sequel to All About Eve that would focus on the characters of Margo and Bill. It was Bill. Played by her lover on and off screen, Gary Merrill. Many years later, after she and Merrill had married and divorced, Bette Davis ran into Mankiewicz at a party and said to him, "Joe, you can forget about that sequel. I played it out and it doesn't work." Which is another fantastic story. But you can really see the chemistry between the two. Celeste Holm is very good in the film too. I think the only real weak link in the film is Hugh Marlowe, who plays Lloyd Richards, the playwright who's written the play that Margo is currently starring in. He's okay, but he kind of really stands out like a sore thumb amidst all this amazing acting going on with everyone else around him. So he really does kind of stand out a bit as not being as great as the other members of the cast. Great acting, fantastic writing, a really tightly kind of paced and plotted and edited and shot story that just keeps you hooked throughout the entire duration. I just was so intrigued to see how Eve Harrington got to that point where she was winning this award. And I loved it. I thought it was an amazing film. Is it a film you should see before you die? It absolutely is. How, criticism of art, but also how this character, played by George Sanders, he was using his kind of status as a critic of the theatre in the wrong ways, for the wrong reasons, and looking at something like that, and how people like that do have power in situations, in circles like that. Because you're looking at these characters, so they all live in this bubble of the theatre. You have George Sanders, he's a theatre critic. We have the playwright. We have all these people, the actors, the actresses, the assistants. So I liked seeing just that world, even though it doesn't really look at the actual theatre stuff itself. We never really see stuff on stage as far as the actual play is concerned. There's a brilliant scene set on a theatre stage, but it doesn't really delve into the craft of that, but more just the people who were involved in it and their lives outside of it, but how it's still, the theatre is looming large over everything they do. It's their life. But I like how, we saw the outside of that and just kind of the human interactions outside of this performance. And also, again, as I was saying, I love how everything is framed from other people's perspectives and remembrances of Eve, how she came into their lives, and how she ultimately got to the place that she is at the beginning and end of the film. So I think that's about as much as I can say. I hope it's been alright. Again, I just feel like this film was so great that I really need to do a good job of reviewing it. And maybe I'm just overthinking it now. It doesn't really matter. But you can tell I love the film, obviously. And I would highly recommend you seeing it. I watched it on Netflix. So if it's still on Netflix, go check it out. It's a click of a button away. And it's a click you won't regret.